Hello there, friends. Mr. E here, and today we are talking all about the Relic Blade. We're going to be going over the best stats, the best blessings, the sort of setups you can expect to use with this weapon, as well as detailing what's the difference between the two marks. I know there's quite a bit of confusion. I myself have a bit of confusion between the two marks a lot of times, but there is a lot to uncover here. The Relic Blade happens to be one of the best weapons on the Zealot class, and it's kind of a standout because this is like the only heavy non-crit weapon. I guess the Eviscerator is also up there, but this weapon really stands out because the Zealot is full of weapons that are fast attacking crit based weapons like the Combat Blade, like the Tack Axe, like the Dueling Sword, right? So to have a weapon that is a heavy two-handed weapon really fits the theme, and also it's very powerful, especially if you know the tricks. So we're going to be learning the tricks today, and I'm going to be showing you how to set this thing up properly. Let's get started here, and we're going to start with the absolute basics, which is, of course, just talking about the stats. Of course, at the top line here, we want to minimize mobility. Everything else here is just a factor of damage output. Power output and heat management both enable us to get more damage when we're in the activated mode, and to stay in the activated mode longer, which is just better, right? That's sort of the whole caveat of the blade. Is it's okay when it's not empowered, but when it is empowered, it becomes quite exceptional. So if you can manage that properly, you're going to be in a good place. For perks, I recommend adding damage to Carapace and adding damage to flak armored enemies. The reason being here, we do plenty of damage to Unyielding, which is boss types. We don't need that extra 25%. Carapace are one type of enemy that will last a little bit longer against the blade. It still does really solid damage into Crushers and other Carapace armored heads like the Maulers and the Plasma Gunners, but that can be the one thing that might slow you down. Meanwhile, pretty much everything else is getting one shot by this bad boy. So really speccing into those will allow you to cut down on the time it takes to punch through their armor. And then flak armor is a good catch-all for tons and tons of other armored types, but also it is the type of armor that captains have. So you can hit them and do a big blast and annihilate them very swiftly if you are using like a stealth or even charge build. Now let's talk about some blessings. Okay, so we have a few blessings that I'll start with that are really bad and you should never take. They are at the first and the last here: counterattack and energy transfer. Both of these require you to get a perfect block, which is not a very seldom done thing. You're probably not doing that very often at all with this blade, and they don't really offer any tangible upside. The counterattack is 12% attack speed. That is not really very much at all, with only a 5-second duration. That's very puny in terms of the power that some of these blessings are able to give us. At the end here is energy transfer. Again, needs a perfect block, and it transfers a percentage of your heat away. So I mean, I guess you could keep your heat managed like this, but this seems like silly to invest a blessing in something you're going to have to take time out of your busy DPSing schedule to block enemies perfectly, when we could just be cutting your heads off. So much of this blade is all about staying in that empowered mode and sweeping as many enemies as possible, right? Just hitting as many enemies as possible at all times. And that is why we're really going to focus on blessings that can keep our heat like down or keep us in that active mode more, and mean that we can hit more enemies because the empower mode is so good. And that's why one of the best picks on the blade is Wrath here. Wrath is stacking up to 200% cleave, and this is really easy to stack. This acts on everything, right? It's hitting single target, hitting multi-target, allows you to effortlessly swivel from, you know, DPSing on a one single target like a boss or a crusher or something, and then go into horde clearing. You'll have an extra 200% cleave. What that 200% extra cleave is doing is it's allowing your follow through on your attacks to deal a higher percentage than they would normally. So normally, I don't know what the exact cleave values is because for some reason it's hidden in the game, but you'll deal only a percentage, say it's like 50% or so, to the second target beyond the first. And then the third target would take 25%. If you add 200% cleave on there, pretty much everything that you can hit in a sweep is going to take that full damage of the first blow. And when your first blow is dealing the amount of damage that this thing can deal when it's empowered, it's very good. So this leads you just to turning into a like a lawnmower for hordes, right? You just sweep 1 or 2 times, and that damage from the empowered light attack or empowered push attack is just going to sweep through and kill like Moby and 21st, everything. It's just very, very simply. And this gives you enough cleave as well that if there happens to be a slightly more armored enemy in there, like a Rager or a Mauler, you'll hit them and you'll carry on through. You'll get a follow through with the blow. It won't stop your blade from dealing damage to anything beyond it, because it's a pretty hefty penalty normally to hit one of those enemies, and you just wouldn't kill anything else. So this is a really, really solid one to choose on there, and it's going to improve your damage throughput a ton, because one of the things this weapon does best is like mix hordes. Then we have a couple of options here. So the other thing I mentioned that we want to do is we want to get rid of our heat, or we want to make certain that we have good uptime on our powered up mode, because that's where we're really doing the damage. So you got 3 options for that. You get heat sink, you've got cranial grounding, and you've got overload. These are the ones that you'll probably really be thinking about. But I'll make the argument to you that heat sink out of these is not all that good. It gives you a reduction in heat over 3 seconds on weak spot or critical kills, but can be refreshed during your active duration. This requires kills though, and it is only 10% heat over 3 seconds. Keep in mind that you are generating heat generally faster than that. So this ends up, it will stall the amount of time that you have before the thing overloads, but it won't keep you up perennially. It's not nearly fast enough for that. And additionally, it doesn't offer any other upsides. It's just a reduction in heat. Now compare that to cranial grounding here, which is definitely a very solid contender. It can give you up to 30% heat buildup reduction and 20% weak spot damage for 3 seconds on chained weak spot hits. So all you gotta do is hit that weak spot over and over and over again, and you're gonna get this. However, if you miss one, if you hit a body shot or you miss an attack entirely, then you lose the buff. And it only lasts 3 seconds, so you're gonna have to reset it. And that can play a little bit of havoc on your heat generation. Now, keep in mind that when you are building up heat on the blade, when it caps out, you have about a 7-second period where you have to wait for it to cool all the way down, right? And so this can delay the amount of time that you'll spend before you have to go into lockout mode and cool all the way down. So you'll get a little bit more juice out of it, provided you are hitting those headshots. However, I think that probably the superior pick here is Overload. Overload just ends up being a generally better pick for uptime, as measured by, using the uptime mod to see which of these was more active and giving me a better percentage activated on the blade. And Overload gives you a 25% heat reduction immediately when you max it out. So instead of having a 7-second cooldown, you have like a 5 point little bit of change second cooldown, and that means you end up spending a much larger percentage of your time in the activated mode, which is really, really nice. Plus, this additionally has a little bit of an explosion around you when it overloads. It doesn't do like almost any damage, but what it does is it staggers, and that can defend you during a period of time where you're about to lose a lot of power, right? You're about to go from cutting through most enemies in front of you in one strike to, okay, I need a second to like reset here because I no longer am on my super powered juice mode. That'll buy you an extra half second before you can empower the blade and start again, right? So it's just a little bit of extra stagger and space making in there that can be quite nice. And this is a very easy one. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to micromanage it at all. It just makes the cooldown 25% shorter, which I think would be good on pretty much any of these weapons. If that's all it said, like, honestly, that sounds pretty good to me. 25% cooldown is a very, very powerful ability. Now, over here, we have some other options that I just don't think you should be going for. Siphon, another one that's bad. Don't take this. 16% toughness, regains at hitting at least 3 enemies. Wow, look how many caveats this has. 16% toughness, which is dog shit, first of all. You get 15% on the Zealot for dodging a single attack. Regains on hitting at least 3 enemies, at least 3, with an attack while the weapon special is active. Yeah, right. Okay, great. That's terrible. But then over here we have energy leakage. This is it looks good on its face, right? 20% strength scales on heat. Yeah, this sort of blessing is really good on, like flame staff and stuff like that. Like the flame staff has a talent in the Psyker tree for that, but the reason that those are powerful is because you can spend a lot of time lingering in that high heat mode. There is nothing on this blade that can preserve you to be at that high heat mode perennially. And what happens is like, okay, you'll start at 0 and you'll build to 20, and then you'll go into lockout and you'll cool down. So in the time you're actually activated, you're only getting an average of 10% strength, and then you have a period of time where you're in lockout. So you end up only getting like a fraction of this 10% effectively over the course of the game. It adds up to be like between 5 and 7%. I almost said the funny number, but I'm not going to say it. Over here is Devastating Strike. Don't take this. It's absolutely outclassed by Cleave in every, or by Wrath in every foreseeable way. And then Rampage is the last one here that has very tantalizing numbers, right? Cleaving 3 enemies gives you a 36% strength buff to your melee attacks for 3.5 seconds. The problem is that this is not that useful. This blade doesn't need 36% more damage when it's cleaving stuff. When you're hitting 3 enemies at a time, you're already killing those enemies. There's no way that you're hitting 3 enemies in a strike and those enemies aren't just dying, right? Because that's for like hordes. So this is just buffing your horde clear damage. It doesn't really have enough time to be pivoted into anything else. So this is just going to be outclassed again by Wrath. So my recommendation at the end of the day will be what I'm using on my blade, which is Wrath and Overload, with a close second being Wrath and Cranial. Now let's go on to talking about the marks themselves, because there are 2 marks of this weapon, and this is a point where a lot of players get confused and they don't know which one they should be sticking on. Now, if you are an absolute beginner and you are playing at the lower difficulties in the game, and by that I mean non-Havoc mode, you are perfectly welcome to use either of these. It's not really going to matter. And in fact, for those purposes, the Mark 10, the MKX, if you don't know how to read Roman numerals, this one might honestly be better for you. The Mark 10, which we'll start with here, has really, really simple horde clear patterns. Your light attacks are just these straight sweeps, and then if you want to continue your horde clear combo, you can go into heavies on 3 and 4, and just rinse and repeat like this. 3, 4, 3, 4, and that just goes forever. And that's a really, really easy way to clear horde, which is going to be like 90% of what you guys are doing when you're not playing in the Havoc mode. And just keep in mind that all the weapon combos on this weapon are the exact same when it's empowered as when it's not. And so you won't have to worry about like there being any special activated combos like there are with certain other weapons. But yeah, this weapon, yeah, it's good at clearing horde. The problem is that when it comes to dealing with more armored single targets, this weapon falls behind in terms of being able to access those moves. So it does still have single target strike downs, like you have a strike down on your heavy 1, but then your heavy 2, then it goes into these sweeps, right? So you need to reset. So you can do heavy 1 and then heavy 2, but then after that you have to do a lunge, and then you can go back to heavy 1 and heavy 2. And this ends up being a very slow way to actually deal damage to single targets. You can also do kind of a funny one if you do like a push stab, and then you can do an overhead, and then you can do a stab, and you can do a push stab, and then you can do overhead, and then a stab. And yeah, it's pretty funny just to like throw out like sequential stabbies like that. But those stabs, if we demonstrate on a crusher here, stabs like that, they don't really deal all that much damage. So I'll do this, and then see like that. Those aren't that big in terms of the damage numbers. What we really want is we want those overheads. These are the money shots right here, but you only get 2 of them before you have to reset with this blade, and you're missing out on what the Mark II has, which is a really, really exceptional follow-up attack to those overheads. Both of these weapons do share the sprinting lunge attack, which we'll talk about in a second, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But yeah, what I'll say about the Mark X is that it's perfectly capable of doing everything that the Mark II can on lower difficulties. It's only when you start to see more of those high-value single targets that you want to be doing sequential strike downs on where you'll want to swap it up. So that's up to you if you feel more comfortable here. But honestly, I think it's just as easy to learn the basics of the Mark II as it is for the Mark X, and so you should probably just start your training with the Mark II. And the reason I say this one is the better of the two is because it has easier access to a very powerful strike down combo. As we assessed with the Mark X there's only a couple of moves that are actually strike downs, and yeah, we're missing one particular one that is very, very potent and damaging. And what can happen is you'll do a couple strike downs and you'll get back into that sweep combo, and you don't want to do that, right? You want to stay, when you're dealing with heavy targets, you want to stay in those strike down shots. If you could repeatedly hit the boss in the head over and over and over and it'll maximize your damage. And so the only difference with this blade is that instead of having those light attacks on the be like sweeps, we have some strike downs here, which is actually quite effective when it's empowered. I mean, look at the damage, like not bad, right? Just a light attack spam this guy. They're like pseudo strike down. That's a Vanguard there, but like that's not bad in terms of damage, just for some light attack spam. But what you really want to do here is, if you've got a horde in front of you, you'll just want to use your push attack. That'll get you off to a nice little strike there. And what I often do in hordes is I just do a push attack and then follow up with one light attack, push attack, follow up with one light attack, push attack, one light attack, because that generally is enough damage to deal with the horde. I find personally you can of course use a push attack and then do like some heavy sweeps like this, or you can even just start with heavy sweeps and then do that and then reset, because after those heavy sweeps it goes into some strike downs and uppercuts and stuff like that. Those sweeps with the heavies are overkill generally for most smaller enemies, so I actually just use the push stab and then a light sweep, push stab, then a light attack like that, and that's just more than enough to get rid of most hordes. So that's really good there. But the main thing that you'll want to come to this blade for is the strike down combo. Again, I'm not going to empower the blade because it'll kill this guy too fast, but basically all you got to do is just do any number really, like 1 or 2 of these strike downs, and then just start doing heavy attacks. So I'm going to do 1, and then I'll do my heavy attack, and then I'm just going to heavy attack, right? So this is the combo right here: overhead, and then uppercut, overhead, and then uppercut. And you can see that like those numbers are quite big, especially that uppercut. Now, this is a kind of a weird one to control, I feel like, for most players. They're like, okay, wait, how do I hit the head if I'm swinging like through the leg? And what I've found is that just kind of like, for at least crushers, like kind of aiming above the target, it seems to have a, if you're looking at like the screen where my reticle is, it seems to have a stripe that's about like this long on the screen, that's where it's detecting where it's actually going to hit the enemy's head. So if I wanted to hit the head here, I could place it like that far below it or that far above it, and it'll go and hit the head from there. It's actually quite smart about detecting whether or not you have passed through the head hitbox, and it'll be gracious. Like, you could go through some of the body, but as long as you hit the head in there, it'll count as a headshot. And this is way easier on smaller enemies like maulers and stuff, because their head is like, you know, right in front of you. So yeah, just kind of like aim roughly like around their head and you'll be good. As long as it's kind of on a line, it does that, because you notice that the strike down comes from the same angle as the uppercut repeats in the same direction. So just make certain everything's aligned on that little axis there. And the real thing with that is that you can actually mix it up here. If you want to just do those uppercuts and emphasize on those uppercuts, you can go uppercut and then a light attack follow up, uppercut, light attack follow up. It's really easy just to mix that in there and stay in that uppercut strike down combo. And this is a massive way to deal, as you saw there on the Crusher, lots and lots of damage very effectively. So that's the secret that the Mark II has over the Mark X, is that uppercut strike down combo is just so potent. And as a review, if you want to access it, just either 1 light attack and then start doing heavies, or you can do 2 light attacks and then, well, 2, I started with, so 2 light attacks and then start doing heavies, and you'll start with the uppercut, right? So either one of those works in order to just start doing those heavies and then rinse and repeat. Now we have only really 1 move left to cover here, which is the fancy ass push stab, or the sprinting attack, which is this bad boy. So that bad boy does quite a bit of damage, as you can see here. Hiya, okay, 1866. That's not bad as compared to the like 1300 damage or so the uppercut was doing. The problem is that you got to be sprinting around to deliver this blow, and that's not exactly the easiest thing in the world, but it's a great way to start off a nice combat, of course, to just come into and slide into the enemy doing that. However, there is a cheat in order to do this a little bit easier. So if I wanted to stab this enemy, but say I'm really close to him and I don't have the time to sprint to him, all I have to do is block while I'm sprinting. So if I just sprint like this, I can do that, right? All you gotta do is, I'm gonna sprint. So the first button I'll press is sprint. Pretty much at the same time, I'll block. And then what I'm actually doing, you can't tell, but I'm actually sprinting underneath this block right now. And then I'm gonna let go of block. And as I let go of that button, I'm gonna hold down the attack button. There you go, now you're into the sprint. That's all you gotta do. You can just do that over and over. And you can just run around and just do this to enemies. Oop. And so it's just a little matter of timing there, and you can do that. Now, the real big thing is that this, of course, plus the empowered mode and plus backstabs of Shroud Field and stuff allows you to absolutely dunk on all sorts of enemies because it's such a powerful attack. So if you've got like a Beast of Nurgle out here or something, right, and you wanna hit them big, you can do this. So we do that, and then boom. Okay, there you go. So like that. Right, so that's the sort of damage you can expect to do. So finally, let's hit some talents that I think would be really, really good if you are intent on creating your own build with the Relic Blade, or you're wondering what would empower it the best. I see some people with some whack-ass builds with the Relic Blade, so let's kind of hopefully correct that. I want to start here at the top with Disdain, super, super high value for the Relic Blade, which is a amazing cleaver of hordes and all things, so you're very easily going to have a ton of uptime on Disdain, getting usually between like 15-20% damage on average per swing when you're in the thick of combat. Then we also have a talent like Purge the Unclean down here, augmenting both our horde clearing and our boss killing, which is super solid. You, of course, take Sustained Assault on every single build. You definitely want to grab Faithful Frenzy because attack speed is your limiting factor with this blade. Attack speed is super, super important. And then as far as ultimates, I see a lot of people running Relic Blade with Chorus. I don't necessarily know why. Chorus to me seems just perfectly paired for a high movement speed weapon, enabling you to get around the map in Chorus in the right place at the right time. The Relic Blade is a better fit for one of the other options here where you're going to get the extra movement speed, you're going to get those extra big hits when you're doing it. The Relic Blade is a DPSer's weapon. It's not a support-based weapon. And yeah, so the Chorus, please don't use this. I know people do it because they just want to use the Relic Blade, but yeah, it's just better suited to a DPS role than it is to being a augment for a support here. You need a crit weapon or something to really make use of this. And then when we're coming down here, you have your choice of keystones. Now the Relic Blade is no slouch when it comes to crit. I will say that. It does like double damage on crits across all its attacks, and then that means it does like 2.4 or 2.6x when you're considering weak spot plus critical hits. However, I don't think it's necessarily worth speccing into crits all the way down to the keystone. I think the better keystones for it are these two here with Martyrdom and Inexorable Judgment. Reason being, both of these keystones here give you attack speed plus damage. And of course, base damage is really good when you have such a high base damage already, but this, giving you that attack speed is super, super valuable. Scaling up your attack speed not only scales like the actual weapon swings themselves, but it also scales all animations. So pushes and activating the weapon, all that stuff adds up very quickly, and it makes a big difference in how the blade feels to have this this extra stacking power of movement speed and attack speed. And the real factor here, I think, for a lot of it is it shortens the time that it takes to channel a heavy attack because it speeds up all animations. So yeah, you're able to channel your heavy attacks quicker, and therefore you're able to output way more DPS. And of course, you'll still hit crits from time to time, and you can guarantee crit if you're using Shroud Field or Spirit of the Faithful, but I just don't think it's worth it to lose potential attack speed on this blade for going into a crit build. And yeah, so you very seldom will generally see this, plus there's no like crit-based talents or crit-based blessings on the blade itself. So yeah, sticking with more core like weak spot hitting stuff and damage plus attack speed stacking stuff is probably going to be the recommended move here. Outside of that, just make certain you're grabbing enough defenses, nodes like enemies within, enemies without, and good balance. And Shield of Contempt here are very valuable because with a Relic Blade, because you are slow, right? You're not very mobile, your dodges are very small, you're probably definitely going to take hits. So you want to make certain you have a good modicum of defenses put into your build so that you're able to survive those little chipping hits. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about the talents of the weapon. Man, I've been busy here, huh? So yeah, there's the details on the blade, guys. It's super fun. Definitely a weapon that I love a lot because it does really just reward like multifold your investment in like understanding how to play with it and mastering all these little like intricacies and moves so that you can have all the fun stuff. And over time, I'm certain that you will get more accustomed to moving and playing with it. It is a blade where you'll want to use your slides with carrying momentum. As you can see here, you'll carry a little bit of momentum through the sweeps so they can enable you to dodge attacks as you're going in for the aggression, etc. But yeah, I'll leave the rest to you. Hopefully that gives you enough to get yourself started. And thanks for watching, guys. Mystery out. Bye-bye.